Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Elena Pinto this week.
What are your views on the DEA's proposed rescheduling of marijuana, and what role do you see yourself playing in ensuring the process moves forward responsibly?
So, Senator, thank you. And if confirmed, it'll be one of my first priorities when I arrive to DEA to see where we are in the administrative process.
DEA nominee Terrence Cole assures Congress that getting the cannabis rescheduling process clarified is a priority, but refuses to say if he's in favor of it or not.
I urge him to continue the rescheduling process that has just kind of stalled. There are many fronts we can fight this on, but we can't fight it alone. And that's why it's so great to have a partner like Ilhan and all of you in this fight together. So as I always say, huff, huff, pass the bill.
It was the last Prisoner Project Cannabis Unity Week in Washington, D.C., with 30 industry association advocates and lobbyists rallying on the Hill in support of moving forward on federal reform. And another huge slap in the face to democracy by the Texas State House. They're passing a bill to stop citizen-led initiatives for ballot questions that decriminalize cannabis crimes. A visit to Atlantic City, New Jersey for the 8th MJ Unpacked conference to hear the challenges and the barriers to entry for cannabis businesses. All that and more on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Elena Pinto next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News, PCMTV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition. I'm Elena Pinto. Instead of reminding you to download the new PCMTV app, we're just going to put it on the screen and hope you know how to scan it. It will take you to Google Play and the App Store to download it. Okay, let's dive in. The new administration's first 100 days in the White House has certainly been eventful. The start of a tariff-driven trade war, the deportation of illegal immigrants, and oops, even some American citizens. Plus now, federal reform of cannabis is back in the news. President Trump's nominee for the head of the DEA, Terrence Cole, had his nomination hearing this week. He's never been someone who has supported reform in the past and has made it very clear that he is not in favor of legalization. However, in his hearing this week, Cole used political non-speak experience to parry the direct question by Senator Alex Padilla about whether he is going to pick up the rescheduling movement that the Biden administration started after the Health and Human Services report concluded that rescheduling of cannabis should be considered.
What are your views on the DEA's proposed rescheduling of marijuana, and what role do you see yourself playing in ensuring the process moves forward responsibly?
So, Senator, thank you. And if confirmed, it'll be one of my first priorities when I arrive to DEA to see where we are in the administrative process. I'm not familiar exactly where we are, but I know the process has been delayed numerous times, and it's time to move forward.
Okay, well, the process that's undergoing is to move marijuana to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. So we're maybe somewhere in the process. Are you committed to seeing it to fruition?
I need to understand more where they are and look at the science behind it and listen to the experts and really understand where they are in the process.
We know where we are. We know what the directive is. Get it to Schedule 3. Are you committed to seeing it to fruition?
So I don't know. I haven't seen that.
So you're leaving the door open to changing course as to...
I'm leaving the door open to studying everything that's been done so far so I can make a determination, sir.
So make myself a note here. No answer to that particular question.
So it's a priority, but he wouldn't answer the senator's direct question about whether he was supporting moving cannabis off Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act or not. While that was going on inside the Senate office building, outside the Capitol, the Last Prisoner Project organized the Cannabis Unity Alliance of 30 other advocacy groups and lobbyists for a demonstration of unity outside the Capitol. The demonstration included the NCIA's chairman, Adam Rosenberg, and featured speakers and formerly incarcerated people who have been freed by the LPP and other clemency groups.
A second bill that we're all concerned about is called the States 2.0 Act, and this is introduced with Congressman Joyce, who's another co-sponsor of the caucus. But this just says let the federal government get out of the way. You know, the states are moving ahead. They're doing it through referenda. They're doing it through state legislatures. Why is the federal government dragging so far behind? We've got that bill out there. We also have a letter to the Appropriations Committee to prohibit the Department of Justice from using any funding to go after people in states where it's legal. And so we want to be sure that they can't undo things even if they're not doing things. The progress towards this has stalled in the executive department despite what Trump said on the campaign trail. We don't see much of it moving, so it's going to be up to us to do it in Congress, and it's up to y'all to keep that drumbeat going and to help us move that forward. We need to act. We need to use our constitutional authority to pardon these individuals, commute sentences. The president could do it, but he's not. So let's us take it up and do it too. I urge him to continue the rescheduling process that has just kind of stalled. There are many fronts we can fight this on, but we can't fight it alone. And that's why it's so great to have a partner like Ilhan and all of you in this fight together. So as I always say, puff, puff, pass the bill.
Yeah. Give it up for our caucus culture!
This is the start of a series of lobby days in our nation's capital, and PCM-TV founder Jimmy Young will be heading to Washington, D.C. for the National Cannabis Industry Association's Lobby Days, May 13th to 15th. This will be Jimmy's second trip to our nation's capital for the Lobby Days, and we will expect he will have some great interviews with political leaders, elected officials, advocates, and others. Also this week in Atlantic City was the 8th MJ Unpacked conference. It featured speakers, vendors, pitch contests, and Growers Cup competition. PCM TV's Jimmy Young was there with two other members of the Cannabis Coast to Coast News team, Pam Schmiel from New York and Marianne Kersagi from Oregon.
What is it that differentiates your trade show, need to do trade show, from others in this space? There's quite a few things, but what's the one that sticks out in your mind? But I think the one defining thing that we do is curious, right? Like everything in our events curated. Our attendees are curated. We only allow licensed manufacturers in, credit investors. We want decision makers, senior level people. Our booth products are curated where they're custom booths that can be built for you, just sending graphics. We curate our content, make sure it's expert level. We're bringing in, unheard voices, really addressing the current needs of the market.
Jimmy is putting together a Cannabis Coast to Coast News special report on that conference that will be released this week on Thursday. Over the past few weeks, we've been getting reaction from Texas on the political maneuvering in the Lone Star State with the intent of reversing that state's ballot initiatives that have led to 7 cities voting in cannabis decriminalization laws over the last year. And now a Texas House committee has approved a Senate-passed bill that bans cities from future ballot questions on cannabis, basically stopping the democratic process of citizen-based initiatives for reform. That's not the only state, though, that is shaking up current laws. In Oklahoma, the Republican governor, Kevin Stitt, is cracking down on the hemp-derived products in his state. Kimmy Cannabis has more from the Sooner State.
I'm Kimmy Cannabis from Can I Talk About It with the Oklahoma Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Governor Stitt has issued a directive urging state agencies to intensify enforcement against psychoactive hemp-derived cannabinoids like Delta-8, Delta-10, HHC, THCO, THCP, and THCV. In an official letter to OMMA and multiple state enforcement agencies, the governor expressed concern over the growing availability of these chemically altered compounds, often sold in both licensed dispensaries and illicit markets, with a particular emphasis on risk to youth. He called for a coordinated cross-agency approach to crack down on unregulated production and sales, especially in places like gas stations and convenience stores, while also tightening oversight within the licensed cannabis system. Agencies have 30 days to present a joint enforcement strategy and suggest any legal changes needed to support it. Meanwhile, adult use cannabis advocates in Oklahoma are pressing forward. The ORCA 2026 petition was filed on March 31st. That kicked off a required 120-day waiting period, during which legal challenges can be filed before signature gathering begins, projected to start August 1st if no delays arise. Once approved, there will be 90 days to gather enough signatures, followed by verification and review by the Secretary of State and Attorney General. Then a final 90-day window for any challenges. If all goes smoothly, Oklahomans could vote on adult use cannabis as early as June 2026. That's it for your Oklahoma Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Peace, love, and all that good stuff.
There has been a very interesting development in the cannabis world over the past few months. A few weeks ago, we told you about Curaleaf's closing of a licensed legal dispensary in Florida and opening a hemp store in its place. This should come as no surprise to anyone who is monitoring what is going on in this space, since the Farm Bill of 2018 basically legalized the cannabis sativa plant and defined hemp as limiting THC to just 0.3% when tested at dry weight. The problem is that human behavior and science have created a way to get high from these products, and since they are considered legal, they are for sale, untested and unregulated at gas stations, convenience stores, and smoke shops. So with the hemp market growing in the billions year over year, we are incorporating a weekly hemp report in our weekly news show. We are fortunate to welcome Carrie Hinkle to our news team. Carrie has been entrenched in Washington, D.C. as a member of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and has now moved on to work with a major player in that space, the Bayou City Hemp Company. Here's Carrie with this week's Hemp Report.
Howdy, everyone. This is Carrie Hinkle from Bayou City Hemp out of Houston, Texas. And this is your hemp report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. We have 2 states this week to report on as it relates to developments in hemp policy. First off, in Florida, we had SB 438 and HB 7027 this past session as 2 completely different ideas on how to regulate hemp products. The Senate bill from Senator Burton, 438, would have regulated and sold hemp beverages in a similar manner as alcohol. We had HB 7027 from Representative Salzman on the House side, which was a more encompassing approach to how to regulate these products without complete bans, but ultimately having a different approach on where they might be able to be sold, how many milligrams can be in each product. These are 2 very different approaches to what most folks agree is something that needs to happen and that regulations need to get put in place. As these legislators were dug in on these varying approaches, we had for months been anticipating a House and Senate leadership debate to get these differences worked out and ultimately find a compromise to implement some much needed regulations in the state. Well, politics politicked, and for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the hemp issue, both bills died this week, and we will have status quo as it relates to hemp regulations in the state of Florida until next year. Next, we go to our backyard in Texas, where Senate Bill 3, the ban bill, has been sitting in House State Affairs for a few weeks now. Well, as of late Wednesday night, the chairman of House State Affairs, Chairman King, has passed out a new version of SB 3, which is very similar to his version, which was HB 28, and this would establish regulatory authority for the TABC to sell and distribute hemp beverages. The bill would also establish hemp retail licenses to allow for hemp stores to sell all products that are not hemp beverages. Flower would still be legal under certain limits, edibles, tinctures, etc. This is a dramatic change from Senator Perry and the Lieutenant Governor's approach, which has been, as the original version of SB 3 suggests, an outright ban on products containing THC. We now wait for the full House to vote on the new amended version of SB 3, which includes the 3-tier language previously mentioned. That bill, HB 28, and now as the new version SB 3, went from a 30-page bill to about a 130-page bill and was given little to no time for review. So we expect sign and die day to be June 2nd in the state of Texas, although we hope that movement on the hemp bill will happen in the coming weeks. If nothing happens, we'll have our eye on special session if Governor Abbott chooses to call one, and that something could happen at that moment. Still a lot of up in the air as it relates to how Texas will handle hemp regulations, but in Florida, we know status quo until next year. As always, this crazy world of hemp policy never stops, and I will see you again next week for another hemp report on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Again, I'm Kerry Hinkle with Bayou City Hemp.
Can anyone figure out what goes on with Florida politics? This week, the legislature there passed a bill to actually help veterans gain access to medical cannabis. By unanimous vote, the Senate passed a bill to allow veterans to gain access to the plant medicine, and the state will pick up the fees for veterans to get their medical cards. It's great. Wouldn't that be nice, though, if the federal government would do the same thing? The VA has never done anything for our veterans who want to use cannabis instead of the opioids that are typically given out like candy to vets to treat their PTSD. But here's some more good news, okay? Coming out of the state of Montana, the legislature there is moving forward on allowing tribal nations to open up their own cannabis legalization market. And Tina Tasaka has more on this exciting development for the indigenous community.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. There is forward movement in cannabis for tribes in Montana. Montana has passed a bill allowing tribal nations to enter cannabis compacts, with the state giving them direct control over cultivation, sales, and taxation. These compacts remove local barriers and grant tribes the same business rights as other operators, opening the door for full participation in the legal cannabis industry. There are 12 federally recognized tribes in Montana. A total of 8 licenses will be granted for tribal nations in Montana. Mint Cannabis, a well-established multi-state operator, has officially expanded into the Las Vegas market with the launch of 2 new dispensaries, one near the Las Vegas Strip, the other close to the Fremont Street Experience. This strategic move brings Mint's distinctive retail model and premium cannabis offerings to one of the country's busiest tourist destinations. The expansion follows Mint's strong track record of success in Arizona, where the company has become a recognized leader in the cannabis space. Known for operating some of the largest and most innovative dispensaries in the state, Mint has built a reputation for delivering exceptional customer experiences and award-winning in-house brands. Its flagship Arizona locations feature amenities like cannabis kitchens with infused cuisine and desserts, express drive-thrus, and self-service kiosks, pushing the boundaries of the retail dispensary model. Mint plans to hire over 100 local employees in Las Vegas and aims to replicate its Arizona success in Nevada. Mint will offer a vast product line offering flower, concentrates, edibles, and topicals. Mint currently has 14 dispensaries in operation, with an additional 14 under construction or pending. They operate in 6 other states besides Nevada and Arizona that include Oregon, Massachusetts, Florida, Illinois, Missouri, and Michigan. Congratulations to Mint. That's it for the Nevada highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That'll do it for the A block, or first section of our weekly Cannabis Coast to Coast News report, but we have plenty more, including another dozen reports from states coast to coast. Plus, later in the show, we've got a story about a Massachusetts dispensary that hosted a bong pong exhibition. So don't go away. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
We see a lot of companies out there that they don't do budgeting, they don't do forecasting, they don't do any strategic business development or strategic business thinking about what direction they want their company to go. They believe that being in cannabis is just going to automatically be a moneymaker, and they don't plan for things like 3 or 4 years after a state comes online. There's usually a decrease in the profitability of each company because the state gets saturated or gets to the saturation point. If you're not planning for that, you're going to be in trouble when that happens. And that's why we see a lot of cannabis companies go out of business or merge or get sold at that point in time.